Hello. What? No? No, don't do that. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. No, not that. Not that either. Okay. Uh yeah, I gotta think of a good intro to these, but maybe it'll come up. We'll see. Hello. Welcome to AP Lit Corona version. And today we're going to talk about patterns in literature. And this will help you with your annotations and with interpreting literature and figuring out just what's going on in there. And the idea here is that writers are building on hundreds of years of stories that they have consumed and now are like building on that tradition. And so patterns emerge in that. And we also have certain things that we associate in our real lives that then come over because it's supposed to be a reflection of life, literature. And so while it seems like interpreting literature is just kind of like guessing game or beautiful stretching or just pulling stuff out of your backside and making people believe it, there's actually, patterns to it, and it's not like an exact science or anything, but there's some general categories that can help us to unlock these secrets. There is a book on this that a lot of AP teachers will assign to the students called How to Read Literature Like a Professor, but it's over 300 pages and it references a whole bunch of stuff you haven't read. So it's, a little bit less useful to students, a little bit more teachers going, I knew it, I was right. So we'll see if we can boil that down to less than a half hour. Not a bad deal, right? 300 pages in less than a half hour. All right. So what I encourage you guys to do is, as we move forward to each slide, hit pause, and on the document that you probably got at the same place where you found this recording, jot down your associations with each of the things for that category, for that slide. So the first one being directions. So take a second and jot down what you associate with the north, the south, the east, the west. Hit pause, come back, and we'll talk about them. All right, so traveling in literature is really important. It means that there's going to be some sort of character development, some sort of realization, some sort of knowledge gained. And so if a character travels north, all right, they are supposedly going towards progress and sophistication, towards civilization, right? That's where, in the United States, that's where our big cities are, New York and Boston, the big old cities, right, where we started. And for a lot of these patterns, there's a positive and there's a negative. And so the negative there is like, well, there's too many dang people, and it's smog and stuff, and maybe they're just like presumptuous, not actually like fancy, right? There's that. Typically, though, north, if you look at a map, right, you're moving up, and so you're moving up. So that's what north often represents. Unfortunately, that means that going south is doing the opposite. You're getting in trouble. You're going to the bad place, even though you think it's the good place. And so, even that phrase "going south" means that things are going wrong. They're going the wrong direction. Okay, they're regressing. All right. And again, there's flip sides to that. That we can argue back and forth. But this one you can take to the bank. Florida is hell. It's true in life. It's true in literature. Florida is hell. Looks sunny, looks nice, but it's not. It's not. It's where people go to die. We'll actually read things this year where that is actually true. And if you watch the news, yeah, kind of true. All right. Going west. All right. So we have westward expansion. We have manifest destiny, all that stuff. It was where people went to explore. This new frontier is where they went to discover themselves and see what they could make of themselves, right? This sort of American dream idea. So going west is just that. You're going to just to discover something about yourself. You're going to explore some things and so forth. And then coming back east is when you're coming back home. You're coming back to your roots, reconnecting and things like this. Or if you're going to the far east, that could be you're going somewhere exotic and unknown, like China with the wisdom of the ancients and things like this. Okay, so it can also be, east can also mean wisdom. All right, so there's directions. Now let's move on to colors. All right, so hit pause, write down your associations. All right, and so each of these colors will have positive and negative. All right, so Roy G. Biv, start with red. Red are the extremes of human emotion, like it's love, right? It's passion. But some extreme human emotions are also rage and lust and bloodlust and things like this. And so that's what red is associated with, right? And oftentimes it gets the negative stuff. It gets the blood, murder, right? I mean, Beth can't get the red blood off his hands, right? All right, so red, extremes of human emotion. All right, yellow, right? We often think of being sunny, happy, bright. And you remember when you made those drawings in third grade, and you always put the sun in the corner. Maybe it was kindergarten. But there's a flip side to that too. Yellow, something that is not supposed to be yellow, that is yellow, is really gross. Right? It's jaundiced, it's rotted, it's decayed, it's not very strong. All right, so that's the flip side of yellow. All right, green can mean greed, jealousy, and envy. Those are the first things that we think of. All right, but most of us, the first two things we think about when we hear green are going to be like growth, like leaves and nature, or like money, right? And so that's what it is: greed, jealousy, and envy, like the money side of things. And this goes way back before American green money. Shakespeare, for example, said in Othello, jealousy is the green-eyed monster that doth mock the food it feed upon. And Iago is just, the devil in Othello's ear, making him jealous of something he didn't need to be. But anyways, that's green. But it can also mean young and inexperienced, like new, right? Like new growth. Okay, so a greenhorn is someone who is a rookie, who is new at things. Green behind the ears means you're a rookie, you're new at things, you're inexperienced, you're young. So green the positive thing can also mean like growth and nature and things like this. All right, blue, like being on a nice placid lake, all right, is content. All right, it's a pretty chill color, whether it's positive or negative. Positive, content, placid. All right, and you think of like music, like Miles Davis and stuff like that, right? Some kind of blue. So it can also be sad. We know that when we feel blue, we're sad. And so it's not like an extreme emotion like red, where we're like passionate and hateful and angry. It can be very, very impacting and terrible, depressed. But that's blue. Okie dokie. Violet often is associated with royalty. Violet and actually black, purple and black are both seen as like royal colors. And one theory of that is because back in the day, you needed the most dye to make dark colors like purple and black. And so that's what royalty wore. Now the flip side of that is it can also mean false royalty like villains. Think of like the really like maniacal supervillains, the ones who are think they're smarter than all of humanity and going to take things over, like Thanos and the Joker and that guy Jessica Jones. They wear purple. And so it can also come to mean like false royalty and deception and coups and things like this. All right. And purple is very close to black, right? So they can also both be associated with knights and things like that. Black is likewise sophistication, like a black tie affair, right? It is regality and can even mean fertility because black soil is rich soil. All right. And this goes on. What was that one series, the Red Pyramid, I think it was, where they even mentioned this word like in Egyptian literature, in African literature, right? Black is positive, it's fertile, it's prosperity. Red is evil, it's bad. Red soil is hard to grow in. All right, and of course we have negatives here too, unfortunately. It can mean darkness, like you don't see, you don't understand something, or like black souls come up a lot, that you're in sin, like it's got a mark on it, to clean it, make it white. All right, so white does typically mean innocence and purity, right? Like a white dress and stuff like that, black at a funeral. But sometimes white can also mean death. All right, and so it's not, the flip side is naivete, right? You're innocent and pure, but you're also like not that smart. But then the other side is death, right? We turn white in death. Sometimes like there's this idea that like in death we are purified, and so then white can also become a death color along with black. All right. So weather and seasons. The idea is that we take 1 year, or the cycle of 4 seasons, as representative of a person's life. All right, it's a metonymy or symbol, or metaphor rather, not a symbol. So the first thing is spring. Okay, it's that is youth, it's growth, right? The plants are coming up for the first time. It's new life, right? It's love, it's beginnings, all those things. It's very energetic. All right, that is spring. We see that in literature. And we often associate rain with spring. Water is a big deal here. It can cleanse things or it can muddy them up. So if you get dumped and all your stuff gets thrown out the apartment and you're trying to gather it up and get on your way, like it's going to start raining in any movie. And then a bus will come by and it'll splash mud on you. Right, so rain and water are agents of change, right? Whether it's a river or rain itself, right, which can be baptism, It can bring growth. It can also destroy things like a terrible storm. But rain and water are changed. They can be epiphanies, like we wash off the thing that was keeping us from seeing. And here's a few videos that'll show you that.
Tempt me to accept the man who has ruined, perhaps forever, the happiness of a most beloved sister.
All right, so when my one daughter was 3 years old, we watched Despicable Me, and in this moment, like, Drew's really sad and it's raining, and my daughter's 3 years old, was already picking up on these patterns and not realizing what she's doing, but doing it nonetheless. And she says, "Oh, it's raining because he's sad. It's like he's crying inside." And like, well, that's exactly it. Some people call that a pathetic fallacy. But it's exactly what happens in literature, right? But likewise, right, if a couple's having troubles and they reconcile them, right, oftentimes that will happen in the rain. It's like cleansing away, all the stuff in the past. At any rate, so water, baptism, it's change, it's rivers, it's storms, it's all of these things. It's life, it's death. We drown. We need it to live. All right, summer. So then we're going to our prime, right? Early adulthood. And it can be arduous or it can be prosperous because we associate sunny weather with the summer. And so sunny weather can be hot and can create a trial or a crucible that like transforms us, and it's hard to get through. But it can also mean enlightenment, right? Like a light bulb goes off, or like the sun comes down and we say, "Oh, I realized this. I realized I was like really dumb when I was young." We all have to go through that, sometimes many times. And so there's that. All right. Autumn, all right, is middle age. So when we harvest and reap what we sow, and we're getting old and stuff like that. We're not quite old. We're just kind of old. And oftentimes we think of like windy weather and storms coming in, right? The blustery day with Winnie the Pooh. And so that can be the impending doom or impending death of winter. Think about leaves turning colors. It's beautiful. But literally what they're doing is dying. And so that's what we often associate with autumn. It's transformation time. Storms are often transformation and transition. And then winter is old age and death. In winter we have snow and cold. And once upon a time that meant death, right? If you were stuck outside before we had cars or central heat, and it was snowing and a storm, you were in big trouble. And so it can be a time of despair, right? As we're nearing death and nothing's growing, right? Poor Persephone is down in Hades. Or it can be a time of grace, because sometimes the snow makes things look pretty, and sometimes in death, that's what we achieve. And that's kind of the idea with our seasons. All right, so some other common symbols. All right, so sun or light, we already said, is enlightenment or knowledge. You realize something, like light goes on, or light falls on you. The moon can likewise represent that, right? Because it is reflecting the sun's light. But it also is associated with the cycles. It is circular, so it's ionic. And so it is often associated with fertility and femininity. So we even have phrases like harvest moon, right, that come up. And so moon is also good, but then there's like the werewolf thing, so sometimes it's not. People feared women for a lot of history. And like witches and things. Stars are guidance, right? So likewise, they enlighten us, but especially the North Star, sometimes called the Pole Star, is like how people would navigate back in the day. And so when we talk about stars in literature, oftentimes it means that someone getting guidance or finding their way, or quite the opposite, losing their way.
Could it be?
Could it be English? Yeah, serpents are evil.
Could it be?
They manipulate. They have that forked tongue that just like whispers in your ear and makes you do bad things. They corrupt things, right? Whether it's a snake or a dragon, they're bad. They're bad. And sometimes worms can take on this same thing, in that they kind of like corrupt, but not always. Sometimes Satan's even called like the evil worm. Blindness means perception. And that's one of those paradoxical kind of things, right? It seems like the opposite. But the idea here, like with Tiresias in Greek mythology and plays, is that we are so dependent on our sense of sight that it can actually blind us to what intuition and our other senses are bringing in. So someone who has that taken away and cannot see, they're more attuned to their other senses and to their just natural intuition. And so therefore they can see things that we cannot. Right? That's kind of the trade-off. So you find a blind character, you want to pay attention to that. All right. And then scars, limps, injuries, and things like that, it's the same thing that's happening on the inside. If someone has a scar, right, there's something in their past that is still impacting them now, right? They are scarred, we say. A limp, an injury, a sickness can oftentimes mean that exterior malady means that something is imbalanced or not good, bad on the inside too. And so, not every time, but oftentimes. And then hands. Hands are what we do. They are our work. They are autonomy for us and what we produce. And so, in Beloved, this one character says, you got to love with your hands. Like love is work. It's a thing that we do. And so, that's hands. More? Yes, there's more. Violence. Okay, we're going to read some things this year that have a lot of violence in it. And violence is for the sake of violence is an action movie. That's not what we read in AP Lit. Instead, violence, because it is an outward display of conflict, it is about just that. It's about the conflicts that we face in life. Our personal conflicts, our political conflicts, and the struggles and wars that we have to fight there, right? Our struggles with other humans or with ourselves, like those are all struggles that don't always have an outward manifestation in violence, but they can feel that way. And so that's what we do, right? The outward violence represents the inward, interpersonal, or political violence that we sometimes experience in life. Okay. So likewise, sex in literature is not about sex. That's porn or exotica. Sex in literature is about power and rebellion. All right. So Hyde in that 70s show talks about this. And this goes way back to the Greeks that and not to get too political here, but if you think about it, sex, both the act and the biological distinction, is something that has been used for centuries as a way of asserting power or taking away power. Okay. I'm sure you guys can figure that out. You're smart. Even going back to the Greeks, you'll notice that the Greek male gods had lots of demigods. And the Greek female gods did have demigods, but you don't hear about them as often. What would happen though, like there's this example where Aphrodite, for example, mates with the male human, and he doesn't realize. The next morning he realizes what's happened, and he just falls on his knees and starts begging for mercy because that meant that he exerted power over her, and therefore he should be killed. And so she has to do something to make sure he doesn't. And so it's an interesting concept that has really kind of pervaded all of history. And so writers are going to talk about that. They're going to talk about that part of our life where sex, both the act and the biological distinction, have been used as ways of asserting or taking away power. Okay. Flowers are sex. And here, let me show you some Georgia O'Keeffe to prove it to you. Yeah. Oh my. So flowers are sex organs if you stop and think about it, and they're how you make more flowers. It's how you make fruit. It's how you prosper. And so watch out for those gardens, or if someone's in Handmaid's Tale, for example, the character who cannot produce, so she spends a lot of time in the garden. All right, roads and journeys, like we said, are the path that we take in life, the discovery, the decisions, their knowledge, right? The focus of the journey is knowledge. And so you always want to look at the realization that a character comes to and the direction that the character goes through, like we started in the beginning of this, will help us to figure out what exactly is being discovered, realized, developed in that character. All right, eating is about community and equality. And so you think about it like we eat together as a way of showing community. And if this phrase like breaking bread or the Last Supper, things like that, that's about being equals, right? And making peace. And if you're sitting down at the same table, eating from the same plate, it's a way of showing equality. All right, we sit down, we're all on the same level. We eat from the same plate. Thank you for not poisoning me. And we're eating the same quality of food. We are equals. All right, so eating is communion. And then numbers, oftentimes, too. 3, 7, and 12 are the three that I put here because they are the most common. They represent completion. They can be holy, right? Like 7 days in a week. The seventh year is supposed to be a year of forgiveness for all debts were repaid, right? It's how long it took God to make the world, supposedly. 12 is like how many months that we have. It's not how many disciples there were. Lots of examples of other literature where that's completion. Of course, 3, we always want to give lists in threes. It feels weird if we don't. And so those tend to be completion. Now, if you want to skip this digression, just go to the next bookmark. When I went over the colors, I didn't quite do all of Roy G. Biv. Well, orange is between red and yellow, and so it kind of can take on aspects of either. But then, like indigo, is that really a color, right? Why did so this could be a totally apocryphal story, but one theory is that Newton, when he came up with the color spectrum, knew that 7 was a holy number, and that sometimes at that time, in that time period, the church didn't love the discoveries the scientists made, and so if he came out with 6 colors in the color spectrum, then that was not a holy number. You gotta watch out for those 3 6s. But that 7 was, and it would be more likely to be accepted, and so some people think that's why we have blue, indigo, and violet. Some people also think that he was synesthetic, which is that it's both a scientific thing and a literature thing, where you cross over senses, like smelling colors and things like this. So some people think that's why he was able to come up with that. And some people even theorize that a lot of great writers were synesthetic, and because that's where most of our figurative language comes from, crossing over senses. All right, I told you, it was a digression. All right, welcome back. Those who skipped ahead, don't blame you. Allusions are everywhere. And so the nice thing is, though, about the modern age is we can just look them up. Back in my day, we had to memorize all kinds of crazy stories and things. And it's nice to know those things. It helps us to know when an allusion is happening. But you see a Greek name or something that sounds Shakespearean or that sounds like someone else's language, look it up. Okay, it could be from one of the Bible, Greeks, or Shakespeare. Those are the big 3. More modern literature, though, is expanding that as we become more open and globally minded. And so that's a good thing, right? Make it a little less white. But the idea of using allusions is that it creates community with the reader and adds layer of meaning in the text. Okay, and so it allows the author to build on and alter the patterns and challenges that have happened before. It allows us to adopt and manipulate archetypes and things like this, like Christ figures, right? Whether it's Aslan or the guy in the Green Mile or whatever, right? Those things come up a lot. Watch out for it. There's even a Superman movie where he kept doing this. I'm like, really, what's up with that, dude? All right, so I want you guys to go ahead and apply this stuff. And so a really good story, I think, to do that with is Hunters in the Snow by Tobias Wolff. And so there's a document wherever you found this video that will take you through this. And so what you need to do is just read that story. Think about what the story is saying. Okay, remember, a theme or a message is not just like male-male relationships. That's the subject. It's what is Tobias Wolff saying about these relationships. Okay, what's going to help you get to that is create a chart of 7 of these things that we've been talking about here, or other patterns, right? Like my example was a dog. I didn't put that on this, but we certainly have certain associations there, so we can figure it out. There's a ring in there that definitely has some symbolism to it. But pick out 7 things that fit into these patterns, or that are common patterns and things that we have associations with. And so objects and symbols and descriptions of the imagery and things like that, the setting, and state what you think it means and how it ties into the overall theme and message of the story. All right. And so again, if you just pull that other document out, you can just write it on a piece of paper, or take the document and just type it in on a computer, whatever you're most comfortable with. But do try to find at least 7, and there's definitely way more than that, patterns in Hunters in the Snow, and assert how those connect to an overarching theme or message. If you can master that, you will do great in this class, you'll do great in the exam. If not, don't worry. It's early. We have a lot of time. All right. thanks for making it this far. I really do appreciate you guys. And come back soon.